The ambulance siren wailed through the cold November rain, growing louder with each passing second until it suddenly stopped not at the hospital, but right outside Harlow's auto shop, where I was elbow-deep in the engine of Mrs. Peterson's Cadillac. The silence that followed felt wrong, like a scream cut short. Through the open garage door, I watched as the ambulance's emergency lights continued to flash, painting the rain-slicked pavement in alternating red and blue, but its engine had clearly died. "Jack, what's going on out there?" Frank Harlow's voice boomed from beneath the hydraulic lift where he was changing the oil on a BMW. "Ambulance broke down," I called back, already wiping my hands on a shop rag. An EMT had jumped from the driver's seat and was frantically lifting the hood, panic evident even from 30 feet away. Frank emerged from under the lift, his face already hardening into the expression I'd come to recognize during my 11 years working for him. "Don't even think about it, Jackson. Mrs. Peterson's picking up that Cadillac at noon, and she's already called twice." I glanced at the wall clock, 10:17 a.m., then back to the ambulance, where a second EMT had emerged from the back, gesturing urgently to his partner. "That ambulance has a patient inside, Frank," I said, reaching for my emergency toolkit. Frank stepped between me and the door. "Not our problem. County Dispatch will send another unit. That Cadillac pays our bills." Through the rain, I could see the driver waving in our direction, having spotted movement in the garage. "Please," he shouted, "we need help." "Jackson," Frank's voice dropped to a dangerous octave. "You walk out that door to help them. Don't bother coming back." The garage went silent. Miguel, our youngest mechanic, stopped working on his brake job, and even Denise at the front desk had paused her phone conversation. I looked at Frank, then at the ambulance, rainwater pooling beneath it on the cracked asphalt. "I'll have the Cadillac done by noon," I promised, already moving toward the door. "I mean it! Jackson!" Frank shouted after me. "You're fired if you leave." The rain hit me like ice water as I jogged across the lot, toolkit in hand. The driver, a young guy with Rodriguez on his name badge, looked at me with desperate relief. "Engine just died," he explained breathlessly. "We've got a critical cardiac patient. Next unit is 20 minutes out." I popped the hood without a word, rain immediately soaking my back as I leaned in. 20 years fixing engines in everything from tanks to tractors had trained my hands to diagnose by touch as much as sight. Within seconds, I found the problem: the fuel pump relay had failed, likely from water intrusion through a cracked housing. A woman in scrubs appeared at my side, raindrops instantly speckling her glasses. "The patient's condition is deteriorating," she said tensely. "BP's dropping." "I can bypass the relay," I replied, already pulling tools from my kit. "Give me 3 minutes." My fingers worked quickly despite the cold rain, stripping wires and creating a temporary circuit. This was a patch job, unsafe for regular driving, but enough to get them to the hospital 5 miles away. "Try it now," I called to Rodriguez, who had returned to the driver's seat. The engine coughed once, twice, then roared to life. The woman in scrubs squeezed my shoulder before rushing back inside the ambulance. "Thank you," she said simply, but the weight behind those 2 words was immense. Rodriguez gave me a quick salute through the window as the siren wailed back to life. I stood in the rain, watching the ambulance pull away, red and blue lights blurring through the downpour. Only then did I turn back toward the garage and Frank's rigid silhouette in the doorway. I knew I was walking back to unemployment. At 43, with a 15-year-old son at home and bills piling up faster than I could pay them. This wasn't a good time to lose my job, but I also knew I couldn't have made any other choice. "Just did what needed doing," I muttered to myself, squaring my shoulders as I headed back to face whatever came next. Frank was waiting, arms crossed. "I told you not to go." "I know," I replied, water dripping from my clothes onto the concrete floor. "But I'll still get Mrs. Peterson's car done by noon." "No, you won't." Frank's voice was flat. "I meant what I said. You're fired." "Jackson." The garage went silent again. Miguel looked down at his hands. Denise stood in the office doorway, concern etched across her face. "Frank, come on," she ventured. Jack's been here 11 years, and he knew the rules. Frank cut her off. Customer vehicles come first. Always. I stood still, feeling the water pool around my work boots. Someone could have died. Frank? Not our problem, he repeated. There are procedures for these situations. They wouldn't have made it in time, I said quietly. Frank's jaw tightened. That's not your call to make. Not on my time. Not with my customers waiting. He pointed to the door. Get your things and go. 11 years of employment dismantled in less than 11 minutes. I walked slowly to my locker, gathering personal tools I'd collected over decades of turning wrenches. Each had its own memory: the socket set my father gave me when I enlisted, the diagnostic kit I'd bought after my first bonus at Harlow's, the specialty wrenches I'd accumulated for particularly difficult jobs. Miguel approached as I was closing my toolbox. This isn't right, Jack. It's okay, kid. I managed a small smile. You got this. Remember what I showed you about those Japanese transmissions? Denise waited until Frank stormed back to his office before approaching. Jack, Meadowview Garage is hiring. I've got a cousin who works there. Thanks, Denise. I closed my locker for the last time. The rain had lightened to a drizzle as I carried my belongings to my truck, an aging Ford that had seen better days, but still ran perfectly because I knew every inch of its engine. I placed the toolbox carefully in the passenger seat and sat behind the wheel, staring at the garage that had been my second home for over a decade. My phone vibrated in my pocket. My son, Tyler. Hey, Dad? His voice sounded cheerful, oblivious to how my morning had unfolded. Ms. Rivera loved my science project, said it showed real engineering talent. Pride momentarily displaced my anxiety. That's great, son. You okay? You sound weird. We'll talk when I get home, I replied, not wanting to deliver this kind of news over the phone. I'm proud of you. After hanging up, I sat in silence. Reality sinking in. At 43, starting over wouldn't be easy. Millfield was a small town with limited opportunities. Most garages already had their trusted mechanics, and Frank had influence. His word could make finding another position difficult. My truck's engine turned over on the first try as I pulled away from Harlow's. Perhaps for the last time, I drove aimlessly for a while, trying to figure out my next steps. Tyler's college fund was already stretched thin. This setback would make it even more challenging to give him the opportunities he deserved. I found myself pulling into the parking lot of St. Mary's Hospital, drawn by some inexplicable need to know if my impromptu repair had made a difference. The ambulance I'd fixed was parked in the emergency bay, its engine now properly shut down. Rodriguez spotted me as I approached. Hey, he called, genuine relief lighting his face. I was hoping you'd show up. Just wanted to make sure you got here okay, I explained. Thanks to you. We did. The patient's in surgery now. He studied my expression. Wait, did you get in trouble for helping us? I shrugged. Lost my job. Rodriguez's face fell. Man, I'm sorry, that's messed up. It's okay. Just did what needed doing. Dr. Patricia Collins. The woman in scrubs from earlier emerged from the emergency doors, looking exhausted but satisfied. When she spotted me, surprise registered on her face. You're still here, she said, approaching us. Rodriguez mentioned you lost your job because of us. It wasn't because of you, I replied. Still, she insisted. What you did was extraordinary. That patient is stable now, but if that ambulance had stayed stranded... She left the thought unfinished. The hospital's always looking for skilled maintenance personnel, she offered. I could put in a word. I'd appreciate that. She nodded and turned to leave, then hesitated. For what it's worth. The patient was conscious when we arrived. Asked about the man who fixed the ambulance. A slight smile crossed her face. Catherine Holloway tends to remember people who help her. My head snapped up. Catherine Holloway, from Holloway Motors. Dr. Collins nodded. The very same heart attack during a board meeting. And now, thanks to you, she'll recover. I stood frozen as Dr. Cass Collins continued inside. Catherine Holloway wasn't just any patient. She was the CEO of Holloway Motors, the largest employer in the county. Their manufacturing plant in neighboring Westbrook employed thousands, producing cars that competed with the major American automakers. As I drove home, my mind raced with this new information, though I wasn't sure what difference it made. The fact that I'd helped save Catherine Holloway rather than an anonymous stranger didn't change my employment situation. Tyler was at school, so I had the house to myself, a small 3-bedroom we'd bought when Nicole was still alive. Before cancer took her 5 years ago. It felt too big sometimes for just the two of us. But neither of us could bear to leave behind the home where her laughter still seemed to echo. I spread bills across the kitchen table, calculating our runway. Without income. We had perhaps 2 months before serious trouble began. Tyler's braces needed adjustment next week. The property tax bill was coming due. My phone rang an unknown number. "Hello? Is this Jackson Mitchell?" a crisp, professional female voice asked. "Yes. Who's this?" "Rebecca Winters, Human Resources Director at Holloway Motors. I'm calling on behalf of Ms. Holloway." My heart skipped a beat. "Is she all right?" "She's recovering well. Thank you. Ms. Holloway would like to meet with you. Would you be available to come to St. Mary's Hospital tomorrow morning at 10? I frowned in confusion. Yes, I could do that." "Excellent. Please ask for me at the reception desk. I'll escort you personally." The call ended before I could ask more questions. I stared at my phone, trying to process what had just happened. Why would Catherine Holloway want to meet me? The next morning, I dressed in my best clothes, which wasn't saying much. Clean jeans, a button-down shirt that Tyler had given me for Christmas, and my least-worn boots. I even trimmed my beard, something I normally only did for job interviews. At St. Mary's? The receptionist directed me to wait in the lobby. 5 minutes later, Rebecca Winters emerged from the elevator polished, professional. Everything about her screaming corporate in a way that made me acutely aware of my blue-collar appearance. "Mr. Mitchell?" She extended her hand with a warm smile. "Thank you for coming." Her handshake was firm and direct, a quality I appreciated. She led me to the elevator, making pleasant conversation on the ride up. "I understand you were a mechanic at Harlow's auto shop." I corrected. "Got let go yesterday." "I see," she replied, her expression neutral, though her eyes registered interest. "And that was related to yesterday's incident with the ambulance." I nodded but offered no explanation. The 4th floor was clearly the VIP section, soft lighting, expensive artwork, private rooms with real doors instead of curtains. 2 men in suits stood outside one door, nodding respectfully as Rebecca approached. "Ms. Holloway is expecting us," she informed them, and they stepped aside. The room beyond was spacious, filled with flowers and natural light from large windows. Catherine Holloway sat propped against pillows in the adjustable bed, looking remarkably composed despite her recent cardiac event. At 62, she carried herself with unmistakable authority even in a hospital gown. Her silver-streaked hair was pulled back, and though her face was pale, her eyes were sharp and evaluating. "Mr. Mitchell," she greeted, her voice stronger than I'd expected. "Please come in." I stepped forward, immediately feeling out of place amid the luxury. "Holloway?" "Rebecca, would you give us some privacy?" Catherine requested. After Rebecca withdrew, Catherine gestured to a chair beside her bed. "Please sit. I've been eager to meet the man who saved my life." I sat cautiously. "I just fixed an ambulance, ma'am. The paramedics and doctors saved your life." She studied me with interest. "Dr. Collins tells me the ambulance would have been stranded for at least 20 more minutes without your intervention. By their estimation. I wouldn't have survived those 20 minutes." She paused, letting the reality of that statement settle between us. "So yes, Mr. Mitchell, you did save my life." I shifted uncomfortably under her direct gaze. "Just did what needed doing." A hint of a smile touched Catherine's lips. "That phrase Dr. Collins mentioned, you said the same thing yesterday. It's refreshing in its simplicity." An awkward silence followed, which I was unsure how to fill. Catherine seemed content to observe me, as though cataloging details for future reference. I understand you lost your job because you left work to help the ambulance, she finally said. I tensed slightly. News travels fast. It does when I ask questions, Catherine replied matter-of-factly. 11 years at Harlow's Auto Shop, consistently praised by customers, military background in vehicle maintenance. Frank Harlow doesn't seem like a man who appreciates the value of what he lost. Frank has his principles, I said, feeling oddly compelled to defend my former employer. And you, Catherine asked, what comes first for you? The question caught me off guard with its directness. People. I guess always has been. Catherine nodded as though I'd confirmed something important. That's evident in your actions. Tell me about your military experience with vehicles. I wasn't sure where this conversation was heading, but answered honestly. 8 years Army Vehicle Maintenance Specialist. Everything from Humvees to tanks. Deployed twice to Afghanistan. If it had an engine and broke down in a combat zone, I fixed it. Under pressure with limited resources, Catherine added. It wasn't a question. That's the job. Catherine shifted slightly, wincing at some hidden discomfort. Do you know much about Holloway Motors? Mr. Mitchell? Only what everyone around here knows. Region's largest employer. You took over 6 years ago when the company was struggling. Turned it around. The simplified version, but accurate, Catherine acknowledged. What's less known is that we're at another crucial juncture. The automotive industry is changing rapidly. Adaptation is essential for survival. I nodded, still uncertain why she was sharing corporate strategy with me. I've built my career on recognizing talent in unexpected places, Catherine continued. People who solve problems others can't or won't address. People who do what needs doing, regardless of conventional wisdom or corporate politics. She reached for a glass of water on her bedside table. I instinctively moved to help, but she waved me off with a determined look. I'm offering you a job, Mr. Mitchell. The words hung in the air between us. I stared at her. Sure, I had misheard. A job, I repeated, at Holloway Motors. Our vehicle safety and performance division could use someone with your particular skills and moral clarity. I struggled to form a response. Miss Holloway, I appreciate the offer, but I'm a mechanic. I fix cars in a garage. You're far more than that. Catherine interrupted. You're someone who makes the right decision under pressure. Someone who sees what needs to be done and does it regardless of personal cost. She paused. Those qualities are considerably rarer than technical skills, which you also possess in abundance. My mind was still processing her offer. What exactly would I be doing in this division? You'd help evaluate and improve safety systems in our latest models. Your background gives you unique insight into how vehicles perform under stress. The real-world perspective our engineers sometimes lack. She leaned forward slightly. The salary would be twice what Harlow paid you. With full benefits and a flexible schedule to accommodate your son, I felt as though the floor had dropped out from under me. Twice my former salary would solve our financial problems immediately, with enough left to secure Tyler's future education. Why me? I asked finally. There must be hundreds of qualified mechanics you could hire. Catherine's expression softened almost imperceptibly. When I was lying in that ambulance, feeling my heart failing, I heard the paramedic tell Dr. Collins that they'd radioed for help, but were told it would be at least 20 minutes before another unit could reach us. Then he said, "Wait, someone's pulling over." She paused, her gaze intense. In that moment, Mr. Mitchell, you didn't see a CEO or calculate whether helping was worth your time. You saw a human being in need and acted. I believe that perspective is exactly what Holloway Motors requires right now. I was silent, overwhelmed by the offer and her explanation. You don't need to decide immediately, Catherine added. Take 24 hours to consider it. Rebecca will provide the details. That evening, I sat with Tyler at our kitchen table, the Holloway Motors offer folder between us, trying to process this unexpected turn of events. Let me get this straight, Tyler said, his eyes wide with disbelief. You got fired for helping someone, that someone turned out to be Catherine Holloway, and now she's offering you a job that pays double your old salary. That's about the size of it, I confirmed. And you're hesitating why? Exactly, he asked, incredulous. I sighed. It doesn't feel real. Tyler, yesterday I was getting fired from an auto shop. Today I'm being offered a corporate position by the CEO of Holloway Motors. Life changes fast sometimes, my son said with surprising wisdom. Mom always said that opportunity comes when you do the right thing, even when it's hard. My chest tightened at the mention of Nicole. She would have loved this story, would have already been planning how to celebrate, insisting that good deeds deserved to be rewarded. But what if I can't cut it in that environment? I asked. Corporate offices, engineers with degrees, meetings and reports, that's not my world. Tyler looked at me steadily. Dad, you fixed vehicles in actual war zones. I think you can handle a few meetings. Put that way. It did seem less intimidating. I reached across the table and squeezed his shoulder. When did you get so smart? I've always been smart, he grinned. You just never listened to me. The next morning, I called Rebecca Winters and accepted the offer. 6 months later, I stood in Catherine Holloway's office on the top floor of Holloway Motors headquarters. My first months had been challenging but rewarding. I'd identified several crucial safety improvements for their newest models, earning respect from the engineering team that had initially viewed me with skepticism. The Director of Vehicle Safety position has been approved by the board, Catherine said, sliding a folder across her desk. With you as my first choice to fill it. I stared at the offer. It represented another significant promotion and salary increase. This is unexpected. Is it? Catherine replied with a slight smile. You've proven yourself invaluable, Jackson. Your practical perspective has transformed how we approach vehicle safety. You see problems our computer models miss. As I drove home that evening, I took a deliberate detour past Harlow's auto shop. Through the bay door, I could see Frank working under a car lift. Business continuing as usual without me. I felt no bitterness now, only a strange gratitude. His decision to fire me had inadvertently opened the door to opportunities I would never have pursued otherwise. At home, Tyler was waiting on the porch, waving an envelope. Dad, I got accepted to the Holloway Motors summer internship program for high school students. I grinned, climbing out of my new company truck. That's fantastic, the engineering track. Yes, and completely on my own merits, he added proudly. I didn't even mention you work there until the final interview. As we walked inside together, I placed my arm around his shoulders. Your mom would be so proud of you. Of both of us, Tyler corrected. She always said you were meant for more than just fixing cars. Turns out you're pretty good at saving lives, too. I thought about the chain of events that had led us here, one moment of choice in the rain, putting someone else's needs above my own security. It had cost me a job, but given me a purpose. In saving Catherine Holloway's life, I had inadvertently transformed my own. Just did what needed doing, I replied with my characteristic simplicity. And that, I realized, would always be enough.